Right, okay, so just to quickly explain the format for today. First thing is this, I know we're kind of in a religious environment and stuff, but it's not really designed to be a religious workshop. If people turn up, more people turn up, we're going to probably have some non-Muslims turn up. And we've got people of various sects and Muslim sects and things. So we don't really want it, this is not really designed to be a religious discussion or religious discourse, but it is designed, obviously anything that's being shared is from the Islamic worldview. And then the things that I've learned and stuff are kind of from that view, and it's from that kind of faith perspective. But it's not designed to kind of convert everybody into Muslims, everybody that walks through. That's the first thing. The second thing is just the format. Format's going to be, I'm just going to explain the story of Hadi, who's a friend of mine, who's been through this transformation. I have his permission to share the story. I've anonymized some of the details so that he's not identifiable, but I have the permission to share this whole story. Do the story, then after the story, we will, I'll take you through the meditative exercise, and then we can do a Q&A straight after that. Okay? And okay, so let's just dive straight into the story. So Hadi is a friend of mine. He's 30 years old, and he works for Goldman Sachs, but he's not actually that high up in Goldman Sachs. So he basically just scraped his way into Goldman Sachs. He went to university. He failed his final exams. Had to borrow money off his friends who still nag him to this day. And he's like, "Well, you've got more money, so let me just keep it," kind of thing. And he kind of scraped through and has managed to get into the crisis strategy department in Goldman Sachs. So when companies experience a certain kind of crisis, his team goes in and tries to manage that crisis. But he's not high up. He's actually fairly low down. He just kind of scrapes and gets by. He's looking to get married, but he's not doing very well with that. He's got a sister who's married up north, and he's got his mum and dad are up north in Manchester. Anyway, Hadi was basically to describe the event, explain actually what happened to him. He went into work on a Tuesday. So he spoke to his manager, Susan, his line manager, and says, can I work from home on the Monday? They were working on this important project. He had to do like all this number stuff inside Excel and everything. And because it's an open plan office, he was like, can I do this at home? Because I just don't want to get disturbed and stuff. Susan said, okay, that's absolutely fine. Work from home, come in on Tuesday. So he does his work on Monday, goes in on Tuesday into work. And as he's going into work, and he kind of goes and sits down, there's this kind of air in the workplace of like, you're a bit of an idiot kind of energy in the room. So he kind of looks around and is like, what's wrong? Anyway, Susan comes out of her office and says, Hadi, can I have a word? He goes into the office, and Susan basically says, why didn't you come into the office on Monday? And he's like, because you said I could work from home. And she's like, well, we had a board meeting yesterday. I was really embarrassed because all of my team wasn't here. We had some really important things to say to the client. And Alex was Susan's manager. Alex is not really happy about it. Now, Hadi is quite a passive, introverted kind of guy. Doesn't really assert himself too much. He can be quite passive aggressive. So doesn't assert himself when the time's right, and then when the time isn't right, he's like overly aggressive. He's quite a passive aggressive guy. And the thing that was always bearing on his head is because he scraped so hard to get to his job. He was working in Lego for a year after he graduated. It was quite embarrassing. His mum was like, how are we ever going to get you married? You're working as a customer service rep in the Lego shop. And it took him, every job he was applying for was 2,000 applicants. So he was really struggling to get this job. So he doesn't want to rock the boat too much. He doesn't want to say too much. But at the same time, he knows that she's kind of wronging him. So he kind of just says, okay, and kind of just settles down. But it's really affected him. So that happens on the Tuesday. And then after work, he's got to go and have yet another date. So his mum's been kind of lining up these girls that he's supposed to meet. And these are kind of, they're not dates, they're kind of more chaperone dates. So it's kind of more like courting. So the parents know, the girl's father knows he's meeting her, and the mum knows he's meeting her, and everybody kind of knows they're meeting. And first of all, this whole thing has taken him down from work. This whole episode at work, he's quite stressed about that anyway. And he's had feedback already from his mum. His mum's quite a forthright kind of person, and she's like, "Well, the girls think you're boring and bland. You just don't have much of a personality. You don't have much going for you. You don't own a house. You don't have a decent car." He's not got a lot going for him to help him kind of get married. So he goes to this date. He meets Anila. She's the first girl after. I think this is like the 6th or the 7th date that he's had. He meets her. She's the first girl that's taken somewhat of an interest in him. She's kind of leading the conversation a little bit. She's smiling. And he quite likes that she's taken a bit of an interest, because he's not been able to get any woman to take much of an interest in him. So he quite likes that. But unfortunately, because he's just not a very comfortable guy in his skin, he doesn't really bring much of his personality out. And the whole thing's quite mechanical. Like, where do you want to live after you get married? Do you know how to cook and clean? And all this kind of stuff. The whole date is quite mechanical. She's trying to make it a little bit more fun, a little bit more kind of natural, so to speak, and he's kind of quite mechanical about it, and he's really not helping himself. So anyway, that happens, and he goes home, and she sends him a text message, and she says, "Hey, it was nice to meet you, and I know that these situations can be quite daunting and what have you, and maybe we should just meet again. It was nice to meet you, and maybe when we've kind of just become a bit more comfortable, we can kind of get to know each other a little bit better." Well, Hadi being Hadi, doesn't even reply to the text message. He thinks about it. He's there and he's looking at it and he's like, what shall I say? What shall I say? And Wednesday's come and gone, Thursday's come and gone, Friday's come and gone, and he still hasn't replied to it. And eventually, I think he replies like Sunday or Monday. And Anila's like, if it's going to take you 5 days just to reply to say, "Oh, it was nice to meet you," I don't know what you're going to be like as a husband. And anyway, so then Anila tells her father, and it kind of gets back to his mum, and his mum's down in his ears, like, "What is wrong with you? Like, do you not know how to reply to it?" He's like, "Oh, Mum, sorry, I was busy. And the reality is, it's not that he was busy, just he's so unsure of himself, he just doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know what to say to her and stuff. So that happens, and so he rings his friend. He actually rings his friend on the Tuesday night, and he says to his friend, "Let's meet for a burger and stuff." He's got very few friends. He says, "Let's meet for a burger on Friday. When can you meet?" And his friend says, "Well, let's meet on Friday. We'll finish up after work. We'll go for a burger somewhere. 7:00. It's done deal." He says, "Look, I need somebody to speak to." Doesn't want to do it over the phone. He wants to basically speak to his friend and kind of tell him what's been going on at work, so he get a bit of a fresh perspective, get an outside perspective. He wants to tell him what's going on with the state. His friend's a little bit more confident when it comes to women. Maybe he can kind of give him some pointers, some advice. He's kind of struggling to kind of share that, be so vulnerable and share that, but he knows that if he meets his friend, he can do something about it. So anyway, he's half looking forward to it on Friday. He's thinking, okay, kind of deal with the situation. The energy at work's pretty bad anyway as it is. It's not a great energy. He's kind of rescinded into himself. He's been quite passive aggressive with his co-workers, with his manager. He's not in a good state. So he needs a breather. He needs to just be able to go out and have a bit of a good time, and all this kind of stuff. And he gets to the burger place at 7:00. He rings his friend and he goes, "Where are you?" And his friend goes, "I'm so sorry. The Conor McGregor fight's on, the conference is on, it's the fight of the year, man. Why don't you come here? We'll do this. Come on, it'll be all right." And he's like, "Listen, I really need to speak to you. I really need to just have some time from you." He's upset at this point. And his mate's like, "What's wrong with you? Come on, let's just go now, stop being, man up. It's the fight of the century and all this kind of stuff. It's going to be great. Come on, just come here." And he knows what it's going to be like. He knows he's going to go there. It's going to be all about the conference. It's going to be all about Conor McGregor. It's going to be all about that kind of stuff. And he's thinking, well, forget it. There's just no point. So he kind of has a bit of a to-do with his friend. He comes off the phone. He gets some food and he just goes home. He spends the whole weekend just trying to drown out what's going on in his life. So he's watching movies. He's playing on the PlayStation. He's just trying to find things where he can just drown out what's going on in his life, right? He's struggling to sleep already as it is. He's kind of sleeping at 1 or 2 in the morning. He just lays there in bed and he's just very uncomfortable in his own skin. there's just always something that's just kind of eating him up. He's unsure of himself. He doesn't have clarity. He just doesn't know how to get out of his rut. He just doesn't know how to do it. Work situation, marriage situation, all these kind of things. So anyway, he goes back to work on Monday. He gets back to work and goes into work, and he's coming home from work. He's on the bus coming home from work, and the bus breaks down, and so he gets out, and they're like, you can either wait another 15 or 20 minutes for the next bus, or you can walk up to there's like a replacement bus service on another line or something. You can walk up to there. So he's thinking, I don't want to stand out in this rain, and I'm not going to walk up to the next place. So he looks for somewhere to dip in. He doesn't find a cafe, so he just dips in. He dips into this library. So he goes into the library and gets into the library, and he's kind of sat down, and this guy comes in, and he goes, "Oh, hi, can you tell me where the photography section is?" So he said, "Yeah, I think it's over here somewhere." And he goes, the guy goes, "Do you have a book on Kodak? On Kodak's demise," or demise, however you say that. And he says, "I don't know, I don't work here." He goes, "Oh, sorry, I thought you worked here. But interesting that I met you, I was actually looking for you." And Hadi's like, "Okay, all right." And he goes, "What do you know about Kodak?" And Hadi goes, "Well, I know a little bit. I won a photography competition with them, and that's about it." And he goes, the guy goes, "Oh, my name's Ian. Nice to meet you." And he goes, "So, are you a photographer now?" And Hadi goes, "No, I'm working at Goldman Sachs. Believe it or not, it's not much fun." And Ian turns around to him and goes, "Okay, so who do you need to forgive?" And Hadi's like, "What do you mean, who do I need to forgive?" And he goes, "Who do you need to forgive for not being where you want to be?" And Hadi's like, "I don't know, nobody." So anyway, so he kind of just helps him kind of find the book, and just leaves it there. So he goes back to work the next day, and this guy's kind of on his mind, and he kind of is thinking it's a bit of a weird thing. And anyway, at this point, what happens at work is there's a whole thing that's been going on with Nikon at work. Nikon's been shelling a lot of staff. They're having a bit of a crisis. They need an outside consultant to come in and help make some strategic recommendations and all this kind of stuff. So Hadi's thinking to himself, maybe I could go back to the library, look at what happened with Kodak, because Kodak had the demise. Maybe I can figure something out and make a bit of an impression, and maybe I can do something about this where my work situation is concerned. So he wants to put a little bit more effort in. And he's looking for a way to drown out what else is going on in his life anyway. So he just wants to sink himself in. So he goes back to the library. He's in the library, and he gets in there, and Ian turns up again, and they start talking to each other. And next thing you know, Ian says, "Look, let's." The library closes early, and Ian says to Hadi, goes, "Let's go for a coffee somewhere. My friend owns a cafe. Let's just go down to the cafe." So he goes down to the cafe, and he gets there, and Ian's friend says, "Listen," who owns the cafe says, "Listen, I've got to take the stuff to the bank and all this kind of stuff. Can you just hold the fort for a second? There's nobody in there. The cafe is empty." So Ian says, "Okay, yeah, fine. I'm just here talking to Hadi anyway." So they start talking to each other, and Hadi starts opening up a little bit. Hadi's thinking, "Is a stranger, so I can maybe be a little bit more vulnerable. I'm not going to see this guy again. The place is empty and stuff." So Hadi then starts opening up a little bit and starts telling him what's going on. And the conversation goes forward a little bit, and then Hadi starts telling him about what happened when he was about 12 years old. When Hadi was 12 years old, Kodak, this was when, this was kind of the transition that was starting to take place between normal cameras and digital cameras. So Kodak was marketing very, very hard, and Kodak was trying to kind of capture the youth and get them into cameras, hoping that, there's like a marketing campaign that was going around the schools and stuff. So his school had a photography competition. What Hadi did was they said, "Look, whatever camera that you've got in the house, whether it's, well, phones didn't have cameras then, but whatever you've got, try and either do a painting or take a picture or something, and do a good picture and bring it to school tomorrow." So Hadi goes and basically he's at his uncle's house that night. He sees his uncle's camera, and I'm not sure exactly what happened, but it seems like he probably stole the camera. He steals the camera. His sister at this point is really, she's like 15, 16 years old. She's really getting into makeup and all this kind of stuff. So he gets her to kind of doll up and stuff, and then he takes a really nice picture of her. Takes it to school the next day. A couple of days later, the results come in. Hadi's won the competition. His uncle's screaming, "Where's my camera?" and all this kind of stuff. And anyway, the camera goes back and everything. Hadi wins the competition, and basically, he gets told that you're going to get an all expenses paid trip to New York. You'll get to meet Saatchi & Saatchi, Gucci, Armani. You're going to go around. You're going to meet fashion photographers. You're going to meet fashionistas. You're going to do all this kind of stuff. He's really excited. Anyway, he gets home and his mum is, the energy on his mum is just, she's like completely crestfallen. Her energy is completely changed. She's just really, and he walks in and he's trying to talk to his mum, like, what's for dinner? And she kind of snaps at him, and his sister's kind of in her room and he doesn't understand what's going on. Dad comes home, dad's really angry. Anyway, basically what has happened is when the camera's gone back, the uncle's had a look at the camera. He's seen the pictures of the girl, of his sister. He's gone and basically raped the sister, right? This is what's happened in his life. So all this stuff is taking place, and this is the stuff that's been eating him up. So at this point, basically that happens. Then it takes a couple of weeks before all these things, before like the trip comes together and everything. Emails are just coming in. So he, the energy in the house and everything is just horrible. And he basically speaks to his teacher. Teacher sends an email to the guys in New York, and they say that, look, we know that Hadi could end up winning a bursary out of this for attending college in New York. Is it possible that we can that you could pay for an extra person, because he wants to bring his sister, because he just wants to get his sister out of this toxic environment, give her a break, she can have a bit of a nice time and all this kind of stuff. And so they say, okay, but this could get us in a bit of trouble, but all right, we'll do it. So he takes his sister, he gets to New York. She doesn't have a good time. She snaps a lot. Everything's just kind of, it's just not great. And it kind of wears him down. He's kind of rescinded in him to himself. But he still managed to get something out of it. He meets these people from Saatchi & Saatchi and all this kind of stuff. And all of that just kind of stops. And he gets back and he just makes a decision that he's not going to go into photography. He's not going to touch photography. As he gets older, his sister gets married. She basically marries the first person that her mum brings along, because she doesn't want to marry somebody that's going to find her attractive anymore. She just doesn't want to live that life. She's kind of stopped doing the whole makeup stuff and all of this, and she just kind of lives a very kind of mechanical, it's like a very mechanical marriage and all this kind of stuff. And he's out in, his dad wants him to make a lot of money, so he's out trying to make it big in London, and it's not working for him. So he's saying all of this to Ian, and Ian's just sat there listening, and he's taking it all in, and he's, Hadi's explaining, Hadi's gotten quite emotional, but he's kind of feeling a little bit better to kind of get this off his chest. And Ian goes, okay, just repeat after me. So Hadi's like, okay. And Ian goes, just close your eyes, take your breath in, and just, as the breath comes out, just let it go in and let it come out, and just go, Allah. So Hadi looks at him, and Hadi goes, just kind of looks around and thinks, this is so weird, because this guy is doing this thing. And Hadi's thinking to himself, he's not answering he's not like giving me solutions to the problems that I've got right now. This guy's a bit off his trolley a little bit, like, he's just like, he's listened to all of this, and now he's thinking, he's heard about all these things that go on in all these kind of circles and all this kind of stuff, and he's thinking, I'm about to get kidnapped, or what's about to happen right now. He's very self-conscious at this point, but he's like, this man's obviously older than him, so he feels like he needs to afford him some respect and stuff. And he's like, okay, we should probably just oblige. So he just goes, Allah, Allah. That's about it. And Ian goes, no, you need to get yourself in a state where you're calling out to God, you're calling out to Allah, and you need to relax yourself with the breathing. So he's like, all right, fine. So he relaxes a little bit further with his breathing. He takes a breath in, and Allah, and he starts feeling just that little bit calmer, suddenly, right? He just starts feeling something. And he kind of sees a flash like of a tree and stuff, and he thinks, okay, fine. And by this time, Ian's friend comes back and is like, look, we're going to close the cafe down. And Ian goes, just keep doing it. Just promise me one thing, that you'll keep doing it. And Hadi's like, all right, whatever, fine. You know, Hadi gets home, and he's got this list that he's written down of the people that he needs to forgive from last time. So he's written down these people. He's written down his sister. He's written down his mom and dad. He's written down his uncle. And he realizes that he actually needs to write down himself. So he puts himself at the top of the list. Puts it down, and he closes his eyes, and he tries to find a way of forgiving himself, and he just can't do it. It's like starts crying a little bit, gets really angry, and he's like, this is impossible. His eyes open back up again. And then he thinks to himself, like, what really have I got to lose? Or like, what difference does it really make? So he's like, all right. And he's experiencing a lot of the pain. All of this pain's coming back up again, and he's feeling all of it, and he just doesn't know how to deal with it. And he's getting really teary and emotional, and he's like, how do I forgive myself? So he just kind of is like, Allah, please just help me figure this out. And he kind of comes to this realization that to forgive himself, like, you know, he comes to this realization of his sister getting raped was not his fault. That's the first thing, right? He was trying to do something nice for her. He realizes these things, and, you know, all the position that he's in, that you know, he's done his best and everything. He can't keep resenting himself, and he can't keep hating himself. He finally starts coming to this realization. So he manages to forgive himself. Then goes with his sister. He's like, well, I was the one that wanted to take her to New York. It was my idea. Fine, I didn't get the college bursary, but that's not her fault. Maybe I could have managed it better. You know, he's angry at his parents. Like, they should have protected his sister. They should have done more for him. He's like, well, they did what they could. They made the best of a difficult situation. Obviously, forgiving his uncle is really, really hard. And he's really kind of thinking about it. Come in. And he's really thinking about it, and he's thinking, you know, he's trying to find a way, and he just he finds a way of basically he finds a way of just basically coming to peace, finding a way of basically forgiving his uncle in some way. So he does it. So he does that, and he just suddenly feels like this huge cloud has come off his head, like a huge, massive cloud. He feels like it's come off his head. So that happens, and then he has the best sleep of his life. He goes to bed, has the best sleep of his life. He's had some tears that have come out. And he has these feelings of, oh my God, I can't believe I've been so stupid holding all these feelings of resentment and anger and toxicity and all this kind of stuff. So that happens. He goes back to work the next day, and he's at work, and he sat at work the next day, and this Nikon project comes up. And he starts saying to his co-worker, he's like, oh, you know, I've been looking into this Nikon thing, and it's actually really interesting what happened with Kodak. And, you know, I had this photography competition and stuff when I was at when I was at school and all this. And his friend kind of does this, and it's like, have you been taking some pills? Like, when did you get so chatty? And when did you start speaking so much? And all this kind of stuff. And it's like, you're a bit weird. Like, what has gotten into you? Were you out last night? Are you on some drugs or what? And Hadi's like, no, I'm just sharing the story with you. Because it's so unusual. Anyway, that happens, and there's just this event happens. He carries on looking into this Nikon thing. What happens after that? He starts going home, and he starts doing this. Allah, he keeps doing it. It goes on for a couple of weeks, and he keeps doing it for 2 or 3 weeks. And each time he does it, he does feel calmer. He feels like this coolness overcomes him. He just feels like there's light at the end of the tunnel. Feels like there's a little bit of hope and stuff. These kind of things happening. So he goes, anyway, I think it's like week 3 or something. And he's got to this point where he's got to do this whole Excel spreadsheet stuff again. So he's got to do that. So he sends an email to Susan, and he goes, Susan, can I have a word? She's like, all right. So he goes into Susan's office, and he goes in, he goes, thank you, Susan, for giving me your time. I know we've got a board meeting that's taking place in a few days or in a week's time, and I just want to let you know that I need this. I'm going to be working from home on the Monday. I know the board meeting is taking place on the Tuesday. I will be back for Tuesday. I would really appreciate it if you didn't humiliate me in the boardroom, This is not very nice. I am human after all. And I, obviously I'll be doing my best for this project. And I obviously want to make sure that you look very good. It's in my interest to make you look good and stuff. So Susan's just looking at Hadi and thinking, what is wrong with you? And she's like, Hadi, I don't like you speaking to me that way. And he goes, well, I'm not being aggressive with you. I'm just letting you know how I feel about the situation. So she kind of bangs the door behind him as he leaves anyway. And he's like, look, I'm not picking a fight with you. I'm just letting you know. And goes back to his desk and he sends her an email. He goes, just to let you know, Susan, this is what we discussed. I'll be working from home on the Monday. I'll be in the board meeting on Tuesday. I'm looking forward to contributing to the project. And he CCs Alex as well into the email as well. So Alex gets CC'd and stuff, and that's it. And obviously before he's actually complained to Alex about the Susan situation. Alex like, I haven't got time to deal with all of this. So he's been to HR. HR have given him all these platitudes and stuff. And so now he's like, okay, I'm going to take charge of this situation. So he does that. So he does that. He goes and works from home. He figures a couple of things out. He goes into the boardroom on Tuesday, and Alex comes in. Alex is leading the board meeting on Tuesday. And Alex says that we have decided that we should pursue the strategy of telling Nikon to move away from the consumer sector and move into the business sector. And Hadi pipes up and goes, I don't think that's a good idea, because these are the kind of challenges that Kodak had and they've disappeared. And I really think that they're operating from a place of fear and they really shouldn't do that. And they should find a way of capitalizing on the consumer market. And the whole room goes silent. Alex turns around and goes, excuse me, who are you? And he goes, I'm Hadi. I work for your team. And he's like, oh yeah. And the rest of the board is like, and Susan's like, shut up, Hadi. And Alex is like, no, let him speak. And Susan's like, well, obviously Susan doesn't do it that bluntly, but she's like, yes, Hadi, I'm sure Nikon know what's best for them, and I'm sure they've studied the market. I'm sure Alex knows best. And Hadi turns around and goes, I know Alex knows best, but I was just wondering, just in case he hasn't considered this part of it, because I actually read this case study on Kodak, and I know that this is a situation with Kodak, and I just wanted to bring it to your attention. So Alex goes, actually, thank you for that. I appreciate that. They start reconsidering the strategy at this point. So anyway, the board, everybody leaves from the board meeting, and Alex goes to Hadi, goes, Hadi, can I have can you meet me in my office tomorrow? Hadi goes, am I in trouble for something? Alex says, no, I just want to have a chat. So Hadi walks into the room with Alex. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. It looks beautiful. So basically, right, Hadi goes into the room with Alex, and Alex says, I just wanted to have a chat with you about this project. And they talk about the project, and Hadi explains to him more about the project, what he's discovered about Kodak, the demise of Kodak, and Alex asks him some pressing questions, and Alex is very impressed, because Hadi's obviously really thought about it and really made an impression, and Alex really starts rethinking the strategy. So as that's wrapping up, Alex says to him, who was the one that green-lighted the strategy on the last project? Was Susan, these decisions that were they made by the team, or were they made mostly by Susan? And Alex says, well, obviously they were made by Susan. So then Alex says, does Susan have this habit of, can you tell me more about what happened with this board meeting situation, and does she cut you guys off quite a bit? And Alex doesn't want to drop her in it, but he basically says, well, yeah, basically, he basically gives the impression that there's some sabotage there from Susan. So basically, this is really good. So basically, Hadi says, Alex says, okay, that's great. And Alex says to Hadi, goes, if I move Susan out of this line management role into another department, would you be willing to take the line management role? Hadi says, yes, of course. Trying to restrain his excitement a little bit as well, obviously. Alex says, well, okay, well, we can't give you the same salary that we're giving Susan because you don't have an MBA. And Alex turns around and says, well, I don't see how an MBA is going to make any difference as long as I'm creating results. I've brought this strategy to you now regards Nikon. I've made this impact. I've done that without an MBA, so what difference does it make? And on top of that, Susan has, he says, Alex says, well, Susan had an MBA. He says, well, Susan had an MBA, she got the strategy wrong, so I don't see what difference it makes. So Alex starts smiling and says, okay, fine. We can't go up to the exact same salary because you don't quite have the experience, but obviously you're demonstrating acumen and you're showing that you're able to create the results. You're going to be able to affect this project. So let's start with a 40% increase and then we'll work it up. So Alex says, okay, fine. So that's great. So anyway, he goes back. Hadi goes back to his office, goes back to his cubicle, and gets on with his work. He goes back home, and he decides to pop back into the library, and he starts looking at books on photography. He starts looking more into different products and things, different cameras and stuff. He starts looking at YouTube videos, and at this point, he cancels his therapy sessions. He's actually been having counseling sessions and therapy sessions to see if they can help. They haven't really been going anywhere. It's been going on for a couple of months. So he cancels with the therapist, Stacey, and Stacey gives him a call. And Stacey says, you really have to stick with therapy for like 3 to 6 months before you see any results. And Hadi turns around and says, I don't think this is going to lead to any results. So he cancels, and Stacey says, you know what, I'm going to give you a refund on the 3rd month because we do have a money back guarantee. So it's great. So there's a little bit more money coming back in, and he decides to use some of the spare money that he's got to go and buy a really good camera for himself. So then he's bought this about a week or so later. This camera turns up. He learns how to use his camera, familiarizes himself and stuff, and takes it to work the next day. At this time, because there's obviously the transition period, Susan's just about to leave. And as Susan's leaving, Hadi takes a picture of Susan and really captures the mood that she's in at this point. She's quite frustrated. She's feeling a bit defeated. She's obviously got some enmity towards Hadi now, and he just captures her just captures that moment really, really well. So at this point, he goes back home, he puts it on Instagram, and it starts getting, the Instagram picture starts getting a fair bit of attention. People are like, yeah, my manager's just like this, I'm glad you managed to get her back, I'm glad you managed to push her out of the way and stuff. It's getting a lot of attention because he's done a really good job of capturing the mood that she's in. So it's one of these, people really relate to this image of, because they have bosses like this and things like that. So anyway, this happens. He keeps doing this Allah exercise over the next few weeks. He keeps going. Every single day he keeps doing this exercise. And after a couple of weeks, he finds out that he's looking into this fashion project that he was a part of a long time ago, and he realizes things have progressed out in New York. And he discovers that there's a fashion show that's about to take place, and it just so happens it's a Muslim moderate fashion show that's taking place because there's this movement starting out in New York. So he manages to track down the person that he last spoke to when he last flew out there, the person that was arranging his trip and everything. And he contacts him on LinkedIn, says, do you remember me? I was the kid that came out with my sister, and you gave us a tour and all this kind of stuff. And the guy says to him, yeah, of course I remember you. It's nice to hear from you and stuff. And at this point, the guy says, Hadi says to the guy, he says, I really want to come out to see this, how this fashion project goes on. I want to come back out there, and I kind of want to rekindle this interest and stuff. And the guy says to me, look, I'm not on this project anymore. I've actually moved companies. I'm not working with this company anymore, but I know the guy that's working with this company. His name's John. Let me introduce you. So he introduces him on LinkedIn. He speaks to the guy. He speaks to John. And John says, look, this project was all kind of signed off a good couple of months ago. And so there's no room for a photographer, and you don't really have that much. I know obviously you won this competition as a kid, but you'd have to have a proven pedigree and stuff. But I'm happy to kind of start the discussion with you, but there's nothing I can do for you right now. Hadi turns around to me and says, look, I'm coming on my own dime. I'm not expecting you to fund my trip or anything. I'll come myself, and I just want to be able to observe and stuff. And shows him the picture of the mood that he captured on Instagram, and it got a fair bit of attention, sends him that. And John kind of gets taken a bit back by it and thinks, okay, fine. So John says, all right, just come and observe. So Hadi flies over on his own dime, over to New York. And by this point, he's had his first round of salary that's come in as well. He's got a little bit more money and stuff. And before he starts flying out to New York, he messages some of his friends who don't respond. And the reason why they don't respond is because he owes them a fair bit of money, and they're fed up of chasing him. They just don't want to talk to him anymore. Because every time they've asked him for the money back, because these were the people that helped him get the extra academic support that he needed when he failed his degree, his finals and stuff, and just helping pay rent and stuff like that. And he'd made some pretty poor financial choices. Anyway, he basically wants to pay them back. So when he texts them and says, "Look, guys, I'm ready to pay you back," immediately he gets the phone calls back, and they're willing to answer his call and stuff. He says to them that I can't pay you back the full amount straight away, but I'm going to start giving you back in installments. So he starts paying them back slowly, because now he's being smarter with his financial choices. He knows he doesn't want to just completely empty his account out, and he realizes that he's got to play the game quite smart, because he wants to kind of further his career and stuff. So that starts taking place. He apologizes to his friends for having been so selfish as well and putting them in a difficult position. And anyway, he manages to patch that up and stuff. So he flies out to New York. He gets to New York, and he sees some of these moderate fashion models walking in and stuff in the hijab and things like that. And one of the ladies that's there, Nicole, I think she was a Muslim revert or a convert, and she walks in, and she's basically like, she doesn't quite have it to do, but she has a little bit of a thing with John, and she's like, I thought we were going to get female photographers, and this is a moderate fashion event, and why have we got male photographers? And John doesn't know. John, not being familiar with kind of the Muslim culture of it all and everything, doesn't really know how to respond to the situation. So kind of pulls Hadi to the side, and Hadi says to Hadi, "Look, can you deal with this situation?" Hadi goes up to Nicole and says, "Look, you can either get a female to take the pictures for you, but even if you do, they're going to go out into the public sphere anyway. This is a public event, and your pictures are going out into the public. And besides, do you want a female photographer to take your picture that we don't have right now? So it's not going to be a trained photographer. We can't guarantee the quality of what she's going to be like. Or do you want somebody that can do a really good job?" So Nicole's like, "I really love your accent. Where are you from?" And he's like, "Well, I'm from London." She's like, "Oh, cool accent. I always wanted to see London." He's like, "Okay." But so anyway, he manages to convince Nicole that, "Look, let us just take the picture." So John starts taking the pictures, and Hadi kind of joins in with his own camera. And by this point, John's like kind of opening up a little bit, and John gives him access to the equipment, the professional equipment that they've got as well. So Hadi kind of gets involved with a little bit of the directing, and they get some really good shots. And that's about it. So he meets John and says, "I've had a really good time and everything." And John says to him that, "Look, I really think we can create an opening for you, because it's not just about photography talent. It's actually about managing the people, managing the crowd, managing the people that are here. It's all about being able to set the right mood and everything." And John has really seen kind of this kind of leadership quality in Hadi, which Hadi's never exhibited before, but now he's starting to see it. And John says, but these things take a few months to kind of organize. We have to sign budgets off. We have to be able to prove your pedigree. We still don't have enough pedigree for you right now, and all this kind of stuff. Ali says, "Yeah, look, I don't have any expectations. I came on my own dime, but I just kind of wanted to see what the scene was and everything, and kind of just build some rapport and stuff." John says, "Yeah, let's definitely keep in touch." Hadi's clearly made an impression on John by this point. So anyway, Hadi goes back, and he's feeling pretty good. He's told his mum he went out to New York. His mum's really not interested. It's kind of, bringing up some memories from the past and things. He doesn't really tell too many people, but he goes back. He gets back, And he gets back, and a few days in, he gets a message on his Instagram, Nicole22 or something like that. And he gets this direct message, and it's a message from Nicole saying, Hadi, thank you so much for taking this picture. It got like 22,000 likes on Instagram. People are going crazy over this picture. It was one of the best pictures that was taken throughout the whole event. Everybody was asking me, who took this picture for you and all this kind of stuff. And Hadi's like, wow. And he responds to her straight away and says, well, that's great. I'm really happy it did something for you. And he kind of has a little bit of a joke with her. And he's like, well, at least now you're glad. Kind of does a little bit of a funny I told you so with her, that, it's a good thing that you agreed to let me take the picture because I'm really good at this and that kind of stuff. And they have a bit of a banter. And he says to her, he says that, they are doing this fashion event in London as well soon. It's going to be taking place. Why don't you come to that and I'll try and come and I'll get some more pictures taken for you. And she's like, that would be really, really awesome, but I just don't have the money right now because it's a new movement and these guys have to fund themselves. So Hadi turns around to her and says, look, I'm not hitting on you, but if you like, I can put you up some of the money to get you here. And I'll even give you a little bit of tour of London and I'll be there to take the pictures as well. So Nicole agrees. She said, okay, fine. So Hadi says, okay, that's great, but I'm going to give you this money on the condition that you let your parents know that there's a cameraman that's going to be coming and he's helping you to kind of get here and stuff. I just want to keep all of this above board and everything. She said, okay, fine, I'll do that. So she comes over. He goes to meet her about an hour before the event. They start chatting and stuff. He kind of shows her a little bit around Mayfair and Piccadilly and these kind of places. And he starts telling her the story about what happened at work with Susan. And Nicole's like, oh, you're so funny, and all this kind of stuff. So she's really kind of interested in him, and they're building some really good rapport. And it's like really going places and stuff. Anyway, she goes to the event, and he takes the pictures for her. They end up going viral again. They do really, really well. And she sends him another message. She's like, look how well these pictures did. And at this point, Hadi sends her a message and says, can I have your dad's number? And Nicole's like, why? And he's like, well, I'm sure you know why, but if you don't, I'd like to ask for your hand in marriage to your father. And she's like, oh, okay. She's like, all right, that sounds pretty cool. And so he speaks to the dad and says, this is who I am. I want to be upfront with you. I haven't done anything untoward towards your daughter, but I have a genuine interest in her. Would you consider me? I'd like to come and speak to you about it. The dad's taken aback, but he's kind of quite impressed with this young man that's kind of taking charge of the situation. So he goes down to visit Nicole's dad. Nicole's there, speaks to her father, says, look, I have this position right now. I've been working on this Nikon project. I got promoted recently, but I want to go into fashion. This is what I enjoy. And the dad is really impressed by how much this guy's kind of taking charge of the whole situation. Anyway, he gets back, he rings his mum, says, Mum, I can't remember the father's name, but Mr. King, he's going to call you in a couple of days. I've given him your number. And she's like, why? What have you done? He's like, no, I've spoken to the father and he's going to call you. I'm interested in this girl called Nicole. And the mum's like, okay then. She's thinking, this is not my son. Like, who is this? So anyway, he's taking charge of the situation. And then so they speak. And the parents speak to each other. And one thing leads to another. And the rest of it, as they say, is obviously history. So this whole thing's moving forward with Hadi getting married to Nicole, and he's really happy because, as far as Hadi's concerned, Nicole's out of his league, but these things are moving forward, and he's really happy with the whole setup. And he speaks to, by this point, he speaks to John. During this time, also, Hadi's been to a demonstration on Palestine at this point. He's managed to capture some really good images that really capture the mood of the people that are at this event. That image gets picked up by Al Jazeera, and it ends up going viral, and it manages to bring a lot more of this discourse around Palestine to the table, or to the forefront, basically. And Hadi's feeling really like, okay, he's managed to have some impact at this point as well. There's a lot of talk around this in Nicole's family. There's a lot of talk around in his family. His friends now want to speak to him, like, oh, you covered this fashion event. and they're kind of getting interested in speaking to him again and stuff. And at this point, he messages John and says, look, I've got pedigree now. Al Jazeera's featured my work. The next fashion event did really, really well. It's time we spoke. John says, like, yeah, great. I mean, you know, we've managed to finalize some things on this next project and everything. This is what we can offer you in terms of the terms and everything. This is what we can do. Hadi looks at it and says, that's not enough. My work is a lot better than the other photographers that you've got. I want to get paid more than this. And these are my terms. And John laughs and goes, okay, fine. So Hadi gets a really good package that he wants in terms of his photography. They pay for his trip. He gets his own terms agreed for when he's out there. He doesn't want to be employed by them. He wants to work on a freelance basis. He wants to be in control of the work that he does. And basically his career is looking the way that he wanted. He gets to leave Goldman Sachs. In fact, they actually offer him the full 100% promotion increase. And he says, thank you, but no thank you, because he wants to do his photography. And out he goes, and he's getting married, and basically just brings his whole life together, and he's got the whole thing brought together. And the rest, as I say, is history. So Hadi, from one simple exercise, basically manages to turn his whole life around. And then he starts teaching his sister, and she starts turning her life around. And the rest, as I say, is history. All right, so you've now heard the story of Hadi, and a lot of us can actually relate to Hadi's situation. A lot of us find ourselves in ruts, whether it's relationships, friendships, careers. We all find ourselves in a rut in some way. And as you can tell from Hadi's life, there was kind of inhibition there. He wasn't able to actualize himself. There was some self-sabotage there as well, potentially. And, well, I say potentially, obviously, but, you know, just by doing this simple exercise of forgiveness, he was able to lift the cloud off his head. He was able to let go of the past, and he was able to get this rapid increase in emotional energy. But then also, by doing this exercise of this Allah, which is known as the Ism al-Adam, by doing that exercise on a daily basis, because the tongue's connected to the heart, it's allowed him to get rid of the what we call the turbidity from the heart. See, the Western world looks at what they call the conscious and the unconscious, or the subconscious, which really just looks at the brain level. The kind of Sufi practice in the Sufi world really looks at the heart, looks at the intuition, and when you start talking about things in terms of conscious and subconscious, the subconscious becomes this unknown entity. It's this entity that we don't know how to manage. It's an entity that we don't understand. You can't really manage that. So it means that you can't really, it's very difficult to kind of change your patterns. If you know you're somebody that has anxiety, or you know you're somebody that has inhibitions, or you're not fully actualized, or you have confidence issues, it's difficult to know how to actually change those kind of modes of behavior, change those patterns. But when we start talking about the heart and we understand the science of the heart, then we can start changing those patterns. It's much easier. And by doing the Ism al-Adam, what Hadi was actually doing, because the tongue is connected to the heart, he was getting rid of the turbidity from the heart. Now, turbidity is from, like from the word turbulence. It's turbulence in the heart. It's like when the heart is unsettled. It's got too much kind of activity, and it's like when you have water and it's turbid, it's murky, it's unsettled. You can't see. There's no clarity there. And when it becomes settled, you can see through the water. So if there's a rock there that you're trying to reach out to, you can't see it. When it becomes clear, you can see it. When it's not murky, you can see. And with Hadi doing this exercise on a regular basis, he started getting more clarity on what kind of decisions he needs to make. He starts spotting opportunities quicker. He's not inhibited by his fears and his anxieties, and he starts to actualize a lot better. So all of that comes together from this one simple exercise that he keeps doing on a day-to-day basis. Now, the thing about opportunity is it's like what Sheikh Umar explained to me, that, you know, it's like the ant that's crawling on the carpet. If the ant is on like a Persian rug, for example, a really large Persian rug, and if the ant's looking for the white hairs, and what happens is when he comes across one white hair, he just clings onto it for dear life. That's like Hadi, you know, he scraped into getting this job, and he was just clinging onto that job for dear life. So when he feels like he's being sabotaged, or he's humiliated, or is just being taken advantage of, he doesn't feel he can do anything about that. He's too afraid to rock the boat. But when he realizes that the world is full of opportunity, there's lots of white hairs on this rug, then he can start taking charge of his situation. And that comes from, if you go back to the simile of the ant, if the ant was to be raised from the carpet, then the ant will be able to see where all the white hairs are. It can immediately fly to wherever it needs to go to. And that's what happens with this Ismul Adam, this dhikr. When you keep doing this, it puts more light into the heart. It gets rid of the fear and the anxiety. It gets rid of the timidity from the heart, and you get clarity. It's like the ant being raised from the carpet. So that's what this does. And by doing that, it allows us to further sharpen our intuition, further refine our intuition. With this thing it has the highest ROI. Sheikh Darqawi said, who's Sheikh Umar's Sheikh. He said that this is it's a most effective. It's basically this thing that has the highest ROI in terms of the dhikrs, and basically by just doing this really simple exercise, we can sharpen our intuition. We can we can refine our intuition. We can spot opportunities. We have more clarity on our life. We have more confidence. We're less inhibited about the choices that we want to make. We're more willing to try new things. We can basically just really actualize ourselves, because that's what's going to create change for our lives and change for the lives of others, the change that we can bring to others. And that's how we can lead meaningful lives and how we can impact the rest of the world, basically. And that's basically the lesson from the story of Hadi. So just to answer some of the common questions, these were some of the questions that were asked at the workshop yesterday as well. First question was, is it this simple? And the answer is, yeah, it actually is, which I've already kind of mentioned. This is the one dhikr that's going to give you the highest ROI, provided you do it with the tongue. I mean, a lot of people say, can you just kind of do it in your head? And the tongue is connected to the heart. You really have to do it in a way that you're really seeking Allah and you're really calling out to Him. You're requesting His presence. You're requesting to meet Him. It has to be done with that intention. That's when it really works, and it's a really small investment on a daily basis. I started with 5 minutes a day, and it's really made a big difference to my life. I'm up to about 15 minutes, sometimes twice a day, but it's a very, very small investment. And it's not one of these things where you have to kind of try and kind of battle your thoughts and everything like that. You can let the thoughts pass as they are, but just not pay any attention to them. But most of the stuff that's taught about mindfulness that's out there, it kind of puts you in this position where you kind of have to battle what's going on in your brain. And that's very hard to do. This is more about just getting relaxed and just doing the breathing and just doing the dhikr. And the rest kind of just takes care of itself, which makes it very, very easy. It's not taxing. It's actually very relaxing. And at the end, you do feel very relaxed. Because relaxation, what it's all about. The more tranquil you can get your heart, the calmer that you can get it, the less turbidity you're going to have, the more you're going to be able to make much smarter decisions of things. So the more you can get into that relaxed state. I mean, if you have to do yoga beforehand or a shower or whatever that relaxes you physically, that's good. The more relaxed you can get, the more you can put yourself in a position where you don't feel self-conscious. If there's people around you and things, but I wouldn't worry too much about the noise going on around you. Because you get into it, just kind of automatically just drowns itself out and stuff anyway. So that's it. The other question was, is this the best dhikr? It's the best dhikr that I've been taught. So yeah, that's it. I hope you've benefited from this. I'll re-explain the exercise once again, how it's done. And try it. It will really start to change your life. I can guarantee it.
When you do it, you have to pronounce every letter, and make sure that every letter is heard when you do it. So it has to start with the A, and the two L's, and the next A, and then finally the H. And the H should end with you releasing all the breath in your body.
So we'll start with the breathing. In and out, slowly relaxing all the muscles in your body. So you want to make sure that all the air comes out when you pronounce the H at the end of it. And in between them, you can wait until your body calls for the air to come back. So you don't breathe in, don't rush, just let your body be without air until it calls back for it. And once it calls back, breathe in, and you continue until it becomes like a rhythm. And you keep doing it until it becomes automated. Your breathing will be automated, and you just completely let go of all thoughts, all opinions, and you just immerse yourself in the calling of Him.
Once you've done that,
Thank you.
then again, just stay as relaxed as you can. Let the breath dictate when it wants to take the breath. Sorry, let the body dictate when it wants to take the breath in and when it wants to exhale. But when you exhale, now this is the name of Allah, Ya Hay, the ever present, the ever living. When you take the breath in, and then you're going to exhale Hay. So just do that as many times as you like. And by the end of it, you should feel quite relaxed, quite cool, quite calm. Do that as many times as you like. And just take it easy, and that's about it. And just keep doing this on a daily basis. Whenever you like, whatever state you're in, just keep doing that. And it should, inshallah, really, really help you. It'll really bring you into your intuition. It'll bring you out of your head. And it should really help. Let me know how you get on. Send me a message, email me, khurram@billiondollarmuslim.com. Send me a message on the page, whatever you like. Show this to your friends, take it to your friends, show them this video. There's probably, everybody knows somebody that's stuck in a rut. If it's not yourself, we know somebody else that's stuck in a rut. Share this video with them, and let's help change people's lives, inshallah.